Good day. I'd like to talk to you today about another type of personality disorder. You don't see it that common. It's schizotypal personality disorder. It's really something you see early in children. It differs from the other disorders because it is obvious so early. And they have what we call eccentric behaviors. They're readily controlled by their own thoughts. You can tell that they're a little bit off and they're not quite getting everything that comes to mind. And when the children are small, we don't really jump to conclusions because children don't have an idea of social courtesies or social norms. They just say what they mean and feel. So you may or may not run in families. You may have other people in the family who have the same or similar oddities. But we look for quite a few different kinds of symptoms across people. And we'll look at similar diagnosis and compare. But schizotypal, the main difference here is that you do see starting in childhood rather than young teen years or early adulthood. So the difference here is that they have an internal frame of reference that they cling to, and it's different. It's not something that you see amongst everyone. So they depart from the natural way of same age peers. So you might see them as the children on the playing field that are standing alone. They don't merge or interact with other people. They may be watching but not participating. Those are the people we want to kind of single out. If we were doing counseling in the schools, you kind of look for somebody who's off by themselves and withdrawn. But some of the behaviors, it's their own thought patterns, but they also have some odd beliefs, such as magical powers and superheroes. Now you say, well, what does that mean? You know, my kid loves, Spider-Man. Is that wrong? No, all those superheroes are typical for a young age. When it becomes concerning is when they're older and they still believe in all that. So that typical attraction for being a superhero never changes, but that superhero puts them up and above others who have possibly rejected them. But that because of that belief system, they can easily get into a cult system or a bizarre group that adheres to unorthodox kinds of beliefs. And they do that because it feeds into their thought patterns and their own personal perceptions. So yes, it's kind of complicated, but you can see how a person who has that pre-existing oddity of a thought pattern can be drawn to people of like minds. That's where they're accepted. And then everything becomes normal. Then there's nothing wrong with them. They're normal and they found their cohorts. And so they continue to adhere to that. The other thing is that they may experience unusual mental or physical reactions. They may feel their arm levitate or talk about it, or they may feel that they have strong mental abilities to tell the future beyond anything that's evidence that you can see, but they believe that they're different and a cut above other people. And that's a compensation kind of a behavior that they compensate for being rejected when they were younger or perhaps scorned by their friends, which, as we know, children in school are. So we want to keep them involved in friends. And the best we can do is keep arranging a play date. They may run off and not want to. Sometimes their speech patterns are different and very vague when they talk. Like, do you like spaghetti? Well, I had spaghetti before. I'm not sure. No, I don't know. No, what's spaghetti? Nah, I don't think so. So they kind of mumble and talk in circles. And then these are things that, you kind of look for. A lot of other reasons could be happening when they're small. So we don't diagnose this when you're small. And so aberrant things are heard from them and other people begin to comment about it. The other thing is they can become suspicious and paranoid in their dealing. And part of that is from being hurt or rejected because of their differentness. When you're different, as you know, classmates in school could be pretty cruel. And so that's internalizes. Often their emotions are constricted and withdrawn. So it's very hard for them to get excited about things like a birthday party. They wouldn't be as excited as a person who's typical growth pattern. And they may not think that that's so cute. We can observe odd perceptions of events, like for instance, even the Santa Claus coming down the tree, they may have a bizarre interpretation of that. And so those are things you look for when they're small. But when they're small, we overlook all that silliness because they're tiny. But the thing that's really a red flag is when there's no friends involved. There's nobody that they relate to. There's no friends that they have. And if you present or force them to go into social situations, they have a great amount of anxiety, especially when that anxiety persists with familiar people like your cousins or relatives, going to the beach with all the gang and the family, and all these paranoid fears come out that nobody likes them. They may not express it to you, but they're internalizing all these things. It's not unusual for a person who has this issue to become somewhat depressed. And as they grow older, if these things are internalized, they will become perhaps a little bit unbalanced because the anxiety is so high, they don't want to go out to go to work, or they can't work appropriately with people. So they fight and quit jobs all the time. So their internal perceptions differ from something that you or I see, or that the average person might see as going on. In their case, they can become suspicious very easily. A schizotypal person, it becomes paranoid and makes comments as such. But this is not that unusual if, in fact, they're really being picked on. So you kind of, again, you blow off the misinterpretation and you say, oh, there's nothing wrong. What do you expect them to do? Johnny, the other kids didn't like him, so Johnny got upset. But again, like we said, when you're a child and you have thoughts of having special powers, that's not unusual. All children do. But you usually outgrow the superhero syndrome by the time you're in your teen years. So they may elaborate on that as they get older, not shrink away from it. Whereas they may elaborate and say they have magical power, they can control others, they can control and predict things, they can make certain things happen in when they choose to, and they anticipate or misperceive, voices or comments related to normal things. So for instance, if they want to walk the dog, they may perceive that the dog is walking on his own, going around the corner versus getting led by the leash, so to speak. That's just a minor example, but these things continue as the person grows older. So that's so typical. This kind of weird interpretation of events. The other thing that you're going to hear are unique phrases that are somewhat kind of weird, and they believe it empowers them in many ways, or that they're smarter than others. To say, I'm going to knock on the door and you better open this door before I blow it all down with my breath. And this could be coming from an older person. You say, oh boy, okay, their imagination's going away with them again. But in fact, it's more than an imagination because it is their thought process. The other thing that happens is that they're very concrete thinkers, or they can be very abstract. So when they talk about things, if they're concrete, they'll stick to one argument and they'll stay it. If they're abstract, they will come up with something very bizarre and say, no, that's not what happened. This is what happened. And so they'll give you a long story about something that didn't really happen. They would not necessarily talk things over with other people. So you're not going to get a straight answer out of them when you try to understand, what did you mean by that? Children learn quickly to cover up what they don't want to talk about. So that's a behavior that's pretty common to all children. Okay. But for the schizotypical, you will see there's no range of emotional affect to form relationships. So by junior high, usually you get a crush on somebody at junior high, but you don't see that. You see more children that stay quite to themselves, and they don't see an attraction, or they don't see a camaraderie with another child their age. So again, now you start to get worried. Their teenagers are typically social animals, but not if you're schizotypical. And now they're not willing to interact or pursue or compete for sexual attention or sexual interactions with others, which is kind of a really red light for problems, because it's a natural progression of maturation. If by junior high, early high school, you should be feeling some attraction for other people. So rather than showing or expressing affection towards others, they have inappropriate emotions that are totally shut down, and it may be just a flat, non-movement facial expression when things happen. Okay, they seem detached, and sometimes they can get so detached that it's to the point of being unkempt. They may not want to interact with others. They don't care how they look because they don't care if anybody's looking at them. And so that again is a way of retreating and withholding self from a social life. So interactional problems can arise if classmates pick on them, and things that cause harassment. And all schools have no tolerance, so everybody gets suspended. But the poor guy probably didn't even fight because he was just defending himself. Okay, so those are weird things that can happen at school that you don't quite pick on because they're not quite so weird. Every child would fight. But the main thing is that they really have no friends, if any, maybe one or two, but not much. And they tell you they just don't fit in. Mommy, I don't know what's wrong. I don't care. I don't like it. I don't like them. I'm not going to go with them. So that's the way they express it. So they become anxious in all relationships. So even if you're having a dinner event and maybe family members are coming over, a family hot dog roast or family get together, the anxiety heightens again. They're more content to stay in their room and come out and interact with cousins. So those are when schizotypal behavior never quite falls into a disorder. It doesn't have to fall into a full-blown disorder, but it's definitely going to impact your ability to function in your life. In the United States, they say the probability statistic is about 4.6% of population. There's a predominance of males than females. So other countries seem to have less. I don't know if it's because we're just diagnosing it more or because we're more open about our problems than others. All we can say is that flat out description of statistics and research in this country versus other countries is very different. Pretty much the schizotypal relationship or individual has the same traits or behaviors throughout life. So they're not going to change. It's evident early in life. They might use weird language. They might talk differently, perceive things differently, and even interact differently with the peers. Okay. So they're typically more quiet, don't want to be annoyed, and they're more preoccupied with being alone. And that is unusual traits dominate all of their life. Okay. So they're distant. Other people describe him as a loner. Oh, look at Johnny. He doesn't want to interact. Poor Johnny, he can't make friends. And nobody sees it as a big enough problem that it's going to affect every aspect of functioning in life as an adult. So yes, it should be attended to, but somebody who cares is going to have to initiate that therapy, because the person who is schizotypal is more than content to stay alone. So in the future, if you feel one of your family members has similar traits, by all means, dial 211 in your local community and get resources for counseling if you don't already have it. The other resource would be to call your insurance carrier. Every insurance carrier has references to call, and you can ask for a treatment, mental health treatment person in your community. That doesn't mean that the individual is going to want to go. That may be a bigger problem, is getting them there. So you're going to have to work that out. And again, don't jump to conclusions. Just present all the facts you can to your treating therapist and let them make a formal diagnosis or not, and apply the interventions that are possible. It is possible to change if persons want to change. So with that in mind, I'm going to leave you with that thought. May you always walk in light. And may you please, if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe to my channel. And by all means, leave a comment. I'll be happy to answer for you. Again, this is Dr. Ferrara saying good night. Enjoy.